Hello, and welcome to our Sunday morning service. We're glad you were able to find our page, and we hope this message blesses, challenges, and encourages you. Let's begin.
If you like to turn ahead, we're going to be in Acts 12. We're going to get there, whether it's physical or digital. Just a reminder, we're starting to approach a quarter of the year done. Our challenge this year, can you dedicate 5 minutes a day to prayer? So last year our challenge was, could we read the New Testament? And again, that was getting into the habit of reading the Bible every day. And since all of you are perfect Christians, you've kept that habit up with not missing a day. All right, well, but again, it's you develop certain habits and then you try and continue to add to them. So this year's big thing, can you give 5 minutes a day of you interacting with the Lord? And again, it's not a script, it's you just going to the Lord and talking to Him and engaging with Him. And so it's a simple concept that takes a lot of work to sometimes actually pull off. But that's our goal, and to help us towards that goal, we're doing this series on prayer where we're trying to address some of our preconceived notions or some of our stereotypes on what prayer has to be. And really we're trying to break those walls down to say, listen, God is not this magical wish granter in the sky who just does whatever you ask Him to do. God has a character that He has described very clearly to us in the Bible, that He answers the prayers that fit within His character. And it's those ideas that we don't just get to think of Him as a genie in a bottle who gets us what we desire, but we're supposed to approach Him in the character of God that fits what He is seeking to see us. And last week along this process, we hit this tough passage where it talked about working out your salvation through fear and trembling. There's a lot to do with that passage, so if you weren't here last week, worth going back and listening to, but that's the idea that even though I'm not earning my salvation, this is not saved by works, it's truly saved by grace, but once you're saved, it's your job to then start putting godly character traits into you, to actually put in the work to get the sin patterns out and the Christ patterns in, if you want the fancy theological term, to sanctify yourself. So we've been working through that, and last week our challenge for prayer was this idea of, would you be willing to confess to God where you've just been looking for rubber stamps? Where it's like, God, here are my plans, just rubber stamp this so I can just keep moving. And are you willing to confess that? And if you did do that this week, my guess is you probably came to a question or a thought or at least a passing idea where, what if I don't like His answers? What if I don't like what He wants to do? What if when I say, all right, this is the rubber stamp, but then God goes in a direction that I'm like, do I get some vetoes here? Can I go, nope, God, that's not a good one, veto that one, on to the next? It's a natural question that we're going to have of, I might not like the answers. And that's where we're going to hop into Acts 12 to see that we are not the controllers of these answers. And sometimes we have to surrender control. So if you have your Bible, we're going to start Acts 12. We're going to work our way through a chunk of this chapter, starting there in verse 1, dealing with this idea of, what if I don't like the answers? So just starting there in verse 1, it says, about that time, Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church. And we'll stop there because that's a heck of a sentence that you're like, can I get some context with this? Yes, let's get some context with that. One, a lot of Herods in the Bible. This is a new Herod. This is Herod Agrippa the First. So new Herod, first time on the scene, all right? So to sort all of those is a whole lesson in charts. But Herod Agrippa, labeled a king, that's just the term they're using. He's really a subset of the Roman government. So Rome's still in charge. Herod, the subset of that Roman government. If you know anything about Roman history, you know Rome, not very patient with their leaders. Listen, if you can't get results, we will just move past you, usually by taking your head off, all right, and find someone who will. So Herod is going, all right, how do I keep peace in this land? How do I keep my power? So this is not religious driven. This is, I like my power that Rome has given me. He has a history of how he's worked his way into this power, and how do I keep it? His solution, and again, maybe this wasn't his exact thought process, but the end result is what the Bible says. So he goes, how do I keep this? Well, how do I make the people happy in this land? Well, there are a bunch of Jewish people. What are making the Jewish people upset? Well, there's these heretics that are going around saying that this guy, Jesus Christ, was God incarnate. So what if I start killing some of the heretics? Wouldn't the Jews love me? Right? Again, not because he cares anything about Jesus or the Jews, but because he cares about his power. And so, what if I just start killing the Jews? Not the Jews, I'm sorry. What if I start killing the Christians? And again, people of the way, whatever they were called, the church, we'll refer to them as Christians. All right, that's Herod's thought. Let's see what he does with that thought. Let's read on. So, verse 2, he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword, and when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to arrest Peter also. This was during the days of the unleavened bread, and when he had seized him, he put him into prison and delivered him over to 4 squads of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him out to the people. So Peter was kept in prison, but earnest prayer for him was made to God by the church. So, recap. Herod wants power, or to keep his power, wants to please Rome, so he pleases Rome by keeping the Jews happy. By seizing James, James loses his head. And then he goes, man, they love that. I know, I'll grab another one. Grabs Peter. But he grabs Peter during a holy festival in which the Jews would not accept executions during the holy festival. So he goes, all right, I got him, but I have to store him until the festival's over, and then we'll bring him out and kill him then. And so we're in this waiting period. And again, this for us, if we were there, offers some great questions on prayer. Because, wait a minute, the same people at the same time within the same area ask for the same thing: protect the apostles. God lets James be killed, and yet they still go, well, we still have to pray to protect the apostles. So they've earnestly committed to prayer for Peter. And don't you start to go, wait a minute, why James? Like, if you talk about 12 apostles, like there's 3 core ones: James, John, and Peter. Like, if we're going to lose an early apostle, can we take Thomas? You know, like, doubter, like, what good is Thomas? Like, take him as the early apostle. Why James? Like, don't you think the gospel could have gone forward even farther if James was around early on? And you start to run all of these questions to go, but what if I don't like this answer? What if I don't like the way that this is playing out? What if I think my plan is better? And that's where we start to fall into this idea that prayer doesn't stop because we don't understand God's plan. Like, it's not our understanding. It's literally what we see in Proverbs. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord, and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. So Proverbs is being very clear that it's not our plan, it's us releasing control and going, I need to trust God. I need to trust his plan. But practically, we don't usually live that, do we? Again, if I'm honest, I'm a planner. I like things to be orderly. I like long-term planning. I think my plans are pretty good, predictable, consistent, So if I were to say, what's my practical application of this verse? It's trust in the Lord with all of your heart and do not lean on your own understanding unless Jason Krute has a really good idea that God needs to listen to. Isn't that how we practically live out our lives sometimes? And again, you fill your name in there because no one listens to Jason Krute except Jason Krute. So, you fill in your name, but it's I have a good idea, God, and it's going to be my way, right? Like, this is the way it's going to play out, right? No, God, you haven't thought this through enough. Do you understand? Like, here's how this is going to end up. And it becomes less about God and more about what we desire and what we think is best and what we want in our lives. See how, like, this is very easy for the church, and again, if you're talking back into Acts 12, for the church to fall into this, to say, man, God, you can't kill James. We're offended by that. What about Peter? Well, if you don't know this story, let's at least finish the story so you know what happens. So picking back up there in Acts 12, starting there in 6. Now, when Herod was about to bring him out, on that very night, Peter was sleeping between two soldiers, bound with two chains, and sentries before the door were guarding the prison. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood next to him, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him and said, "Get up quickly." And the chains fell off of his hands, and the soldiers said to him, "Dress yourself and put on your sandals." And he did so. And then he said to him, "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me." And he went out and followed him. And he did not know that what was being done by the angel was real, but thought he was seeing a vision. When they had passed the first and the second guard, they came to the iron gate leading into the city, and it opened for them on its own accord. And they went out and went along one street, and immediately the angel left him. When Peter came to himself, he said, "Now I am sure that the Lord has sent this angel and rescued me from the hand of Herod and from all the Jewish people were expecting." When he realized this, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose other name is Mark, where many were gathered and were praying. And he knocked at the door of the gateway, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer. Recognizing Peter's voice, in her joy, she did not open the gate, but ran in and reported that Peter was standing at the gate. And they said to her, "You're out of your mind." But she kept insisting, and it was so, and they kept saying, "It's his angel." But Peter continued knocking, and when they opened, they saw him and were amazed. But motioning to them with his hands to be silent, he described to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison, and he said, "Tell these things to James and to the brothers." And then he departed and went to another place. So again, summary. Same people praying for the same thing, and they get the answer of, no, we're not rescuing James. Yes, we're rescuing Peter. And if you go, "Jason, can you tell us why?" No, I have just as many questions as you. Like, why James? Why weren't they flipped? Why not someone else? Why in this manner? Why in the, like you start running down all of your questions of like, why does it work this way? Why not some other way? Like in the people within that church, it's not like they're just going to go, "Man, this is great." They're going to go, "Well, why not James? Why not?" And do you see how it starts to head down that path of, is it our job to understand God's strategy in answering prayers? Is it our job to approve on how He's going to knit things together? Is it our job to say, "Lord, you run it by me, and I might use one of my 27 vetoes, but I'll let you know whether this is an acceptable plan"? Do you see how it turns into control? How I want, and I don't want to release control. Because it means I have to trust. It means I have to truly believe that you are God and your plan is bigger than mine. And again, even the funny thing within this, they prayed that Peter wouldn't get killed by the Roman government. Guess how Peter dies? Killed by the Roman government. Like later on, at some point, God goes, "Yeah, I'm not answering that jailbreak. Yep, he can be killed by the Roman government." So talk about even more questions. Well, why then not now? Why, it starts to head down that path as we see the way that this is done, where I might not be able to understand God's strategies, but I know what one of Satan's biggest lies is. Again, Satan has many good lies, but this I would say top 5, all right? Personal opinion. Satan loves to convince us to pray in almost if-thens. God, if you don't give me this, then I won't believe you're real. And that's a thing that has stretched for ages. God, if you don't give me fill in the blank, then I'm going to doubt whether you actually care for me. And think of that. Go back to your childhood. God, if you don't give me this at Christmas, I don't know if you're real. God, if you don't get this girl to like me, I don't know if you care for me. God, if you don't get me into this school, well then I don't think you really have a vested interest in my future. Like, start ramping that up. God, if I don't get this job. God, if I don't get this promotion. God, if I don't get this spouse. God, if I don't get these kids. Or if my kids do not have X things in life. God, if I... And all of a sudden we think that God is a if-then. And Satan would love for you to think that that's prayer. God, if you do this, then I'll believe in you more. But what happens if he doesn't? What happens if he lets James die? Does that mean we don't trust in God? Does that mean he's not big enough? Does that mean does that mean maybe he sees things that we do not? That he knits things together in ways we don't understand. And in Acts 12 is something specific and historic and kind of neutral, because I don't know James or I don't know Peter, or at least I don't know him that well or personally, but when we start applying this to our life, like, there's a lot of things throughout life that these come with actually attached hurts. Like, there's deep wounds. There's deep questions of, I don't understand why you did it this way. Even this week, as I reflected on this and prepped, I started to think, like, there's things that you carry with for years. Here's one of those students that you've built into and you just carry with. This was back in Pennsylvania, so none of you will know him. But poured into a kid who at 15, his dad had already run off, and his mom said, well, I want to get remarried and my second husband doesn't want you, so you're out. And the kid put himself through high school. 15 to 18 years old, put himself through high school by sleeping on friends' couches and by scraping enough money through work to put himself up in hotels. Like, that was his life. All the time loving the Lord. And then at 18 enlists in the Marines and does 3 tours of duty in Iraq. Loves the people so much that he self-teaches himself a language that even the magazine Stars and Stripes, the military magazine, writes an article about him, how he self-taught himself so that his squad didn't need a translator. When they'd go out on patrols, he'd translate. Loved the people. And then in Christmas in 2008, at 22, the Lord took him. And I'm like, why? Like, a guy who, you go from my perspective, like, didn't catch a break and did everything he could to love the Lord and pour into people in deep ways. Like, why'd he go? And then I have countless stories of people who you go, wait a minute, they are spoiled from, they don't know what want means, and they've always had excess and always had plenty and always had unbelievable teaching and unbelievable Bible knowledge and unbelievable, and then they come to the conclusion that maybe the world will be a little more fun, so I'm just going to pursue the world. And you go like, do you have to hit rock bottom to realize God is good? Because the people who hit rock bottom looked at, like, where's help? Like, this kid didn't go, man, I better chase the world. He went, God's all I got. Like, literally all I got. Worked his way through high school going, I got God. 3 tours of duty, I got God. Like, do you see how, like, and again, this is not to make light of some of us have lost deep things. Again, and I tried to look at it. I think in the 4 years I've been the senior pastor here, I think we've had almost 100 funerals. And again, not all of those of people here, but like, we've helped bury parents, and we've helped bury spouses and siblings and kids. Like, we've grieved. So this is not something that you're just going, well, that's Jason's problem. There's deep questions within some of us going, how did it work that way? Why was I left and that person called home? Or vice versa. Like, there's some deep hurts that we would love to go, God, my plan was better. My plan would have worked. And yet that, again, is us really in our own way saying, God, I want your job. Just take the back seat. My plan will always be great. But you see how folly that is? Do you see how that's not going to be successful? Do you see how that was Israel for generations? Just read about the kings. God, if I'm in charge, I'm going to do this great. And king after king went folly after folly. Until God had to be like, all right, out of the promised land, let's do a big reset. Like, human history is full of, if it could go my way, my plan is better. And not a lot of, well, maybe God, you're supposed to be in control of this. That's what gets tough. Like, we've been progressing through prayer, and it gets tougher when you go, wait a minute. Every day I have to go, you're God and I'm not, which means I'm not in control. Means I have to do what you've called me to do and change things. What if I don't understand? Or what if I don't like? Or good questions. Some tough questions. Same guy we see here. When you might ask the question, why the variety of answers? Why no to James, yes to Peter? Overall, I don't know. I know if you zoom it all the way out to go, God's still going to come back and God's still going to reign and God's still going to get all the glory. But that's really zoomed out. If you zoom into our lives, I don't know, but oversimplified. Again, trying to deal with all of the devastation and hurts and empathy in 2 sentences. Like, oversimplified, it's God's trying to build my trust in Him so He gets more glory. Again, God's trying to build my trust in Him so He gets more glory. Like, that's why we do this. Peter, the same guy in Acts 12, who for some reason gets the sparing, all right, yes, we'll get you out, goes on to write to the church in 1 Peter, and again, way oversimplification of 1 Peter. But my version of my simplification, 1 Peter, everyone's getting scattered. The persecution of the church is getting worse. And again, put it into Roman history. Christians were thrown into the Colosseum to get torn apart by wild animals, like hardcore persecution. And Peter writes a letter to these believers. And he basically goes, what's the matter? If they killed Jesus, what do you think they're going to do to us? Get over it and keep telling people about Jesus. Way too simplified for 1 Peter. But ballpark, literally 1 Peter 4. 1 Peter 4, his summary statement here goes, Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trials when it comes upon you to test you, as though it's something strange were happening to you. So again, as they were getting persecuted, Peter's going, like, this shouldn't surprise us. We should have expected this. Like, it's going to come. Don't be surprised that you're like, man, we got the short end of the stick that Rome doesn't like us. He's like, what did you think? That they were all going to love you? He goes, but rejoice insofar as you share Christ's suffering, that you may also rejoice and be glad when His glory is revealed. So again, context. He's telling people that literally might get thrown into the Colosseum to be torn apart by wild animals, and he goes, be happy about it, because you've been counted worthy to suffer for Christ. And you're just going to see the glory of Christ quicker. Peter, killed by Rome. He didn't get a pass the rest of his life. Killed by Rome. Going, man, praise the Lord. gets tough. To actually say, man, Lord, you're in charge of my life. Because there's a lot of trickle down there. You're in charge of my parents, you're in charge of my spouse, you're in charge of my kids, and I'm accepting it. I'm not saying it's easy, because I would love to go, man, I've reached that point, but do you know where I'm at? Lord, here's my 30-year plan, and here's the way I'd like to see everything. I'm still in I would prefer. So this is not something that you go easy to master. There's still a lot of I would prefers. But I still have to go, but you are God and I am not. And that's the toughest. For us, that leads to our challenge this week. As we've been doing different prayer things. And last week, specifically, it was the confessing of, here's where I'm trying to look for a rubber stamp. Those plans in life that you've laid out and you're just saying, God, just rubber stamp this so I can keep moving. This week, similar vein, little broader. Are we willing to ask God to take an attitude in our life that is not correct and change it? And if you say there is no attitude that's not correct, you sound like my 10-year-old, all right? So, hopefully you realize, no, there's things in our life. And if you're going, well, how do I determine that? You determine that by going, listen, fruits of the Spirit tell you what is honoring to God. The sinful nature, so if you're going, man, this makes me angry, this makes me jealous, this makes me bitter, this makes me have fits of rage, this makes, again, that could be towards people, it could be towards neighbors for big reasons, little reasons. They don't pick up the dog poop off the lawn and I just want to throw it at their house, fits of rage, no matter how justified you think you are, all right, So it goes into, and again, you can run this all the way up. Goes into political parties, governments, are you willing to actually go, God, this is not glorifying to you. Help me change. That's a tough prayer. To actually look to say, this doesn't benefit you. I can't justify this attitude and this again, bitterness, rage, whatever it is. And I have to ask you to change it. Sometimes it's control. I would suggest don't start with the biggest issue. Learn the process by starting sometimes with little ones. 7 days, 7 times going, Lord, this doesn't glorify you, and I need to glorify you in this aspect of life. Help me change it. Lord, this doesn't glorify you. It's not the character you've asked me to be. Help me change it. Scary thing is the more committed you are to that, the more he's committed to change you. And then you actually might like your mother-in-law. And, no one wants that in life, right? So, but wherever it is, it's that idea of, are you willing to go, God, you're God, I'm not. You're in control, I'm not. And to practically try to work out patterns in your life to say, you need to take this over. Tough? Yes. It's not one of those things that you go, yeah, I'll have that mastered in 7 days and I'll come back and we'll be ready for next week. This will be a lifelong process for you to continue to give up your control. Again, coming from a guy who would love to lay down a 40-year plan and say, God, just keep it on these rails and we'll be great. But that's not my job. My job is to say, he's God and I'm not. Tough, but what we do. Let's pray.